Small as an Elephant by Jennifer Richard Jacobson, a first chapter Friday read aloud video and author interview video with the Word Nerd. Today, as you listen, watch for the story quote that will appear on screen. Write it down word by word and then follow the instructions given to you by your teacher. Hi, my name's Amanda Zieba. Welcome to my channel, Learning with the Word Nerd, and another First Chapter Friday video. This week, I'm going to be reading to you from Small as an Elephant, and then I'm going to be chatting with the author, Jennifer Richard Jacobson, so be sure you stick around for that. This book combines two really unique topics in a really unique way: elephants and mental health. Let me read the back so you understand what I mean. Jack's mom is gone. When 11-year-old Jack Martell wakes up on the first morning of a camping trip with his mom in Acadia National Park, he is all alone. It's not the first time Jack's mom has disappeared, and Jack knows that it's up to him to find her before someone figures out what's happened and separates them forever. But finding his mom in the state of Maine isn't the same as finding her in their neighborhood back in Boston. While Jack searches the places they'd planned to visit with nothing but a small plastic elephant to keep him company, a dark thought plagues him. Once he finds his mom, will he be able to forgive her? Throughout this book and Jack's journey, each chapter starts with an interesting fact about elephants, and elephants mean a lot to Jack, and we'll find out why as we go through. But here are just a few of the fun ones I've marked. Separated elephants keep in touch with infrasonic calls, sounds too low-pitched for humans to hear. Due to the thick padding on their feet, elephants walk silently, which is crazy because they're huge. In Thailand, people walk under an elephant's belly for good luck. So we're going to dive right into chapter 1 here and find out about Jack and his particular situation. And then, like I said, we're going to talk to the author, so be sure to stick around for that. Chapter 1 of Small as an Elephant by Jennifer Richard Jacobson. If anyone wants to know what elephants are like, they are like people, only more so. A quote from Peter Corniel. Elephants can sense danger. They're able to detect an approaching tsunami or earthquake before it hits. Unfortunately, Jack did not have this talent. The day his life was turned completely upside down, he was caught completely unaware. He was in a little hubba tent at Seawall Campground on Mount Desert Island. The night had been cool, and Jack had been glad he'd insisted on taking his warmer sleeping bag when his mom tried to talk him into the other one, the one that was lighter and easier to scrunch up. But now it was morning, and he was hot. His sweat-soaked hair stuck to his neck and forehead. Clothes dryer, that's what the tent smelled like, a trapped heat smell that filled his nostrils and told him the sun was high. It's gotta be lunchtime, he thought, kicking off his sleeping bag. Why hadn't she woken him up? He raced the tent zipper around his trek and scrambled out into fresh air. Dang, the rental car was gone. He stood there, rooted, as if his eyes had to adjust to the light, had to let forms take shape, and the car would be there, right where she'd left it. But the car was really gone. So was the little tent his mother had pitched on the gravelly ground next to his. Jack tried to take a deep breath, but the air outside was now as heavy and suffocating as the air inside his tent had been. Had she moved sites? Maybe the ground beneath her sleeping bag was too rocky, and she'd decided to find a better site, which would make sense, he suddenly realized, because the camping gear they'd spread across the picnic table was no longer there either. All that was left on the site was Jack and his hubba tent. He fumbled for his phone to call her. No reception at the campground, at least not in this spot. Relax, he told himself. It probably had nothing to do with what had happened yesterday. A softer site, or one closer to the ocean, had probably opened up. She jumped on it and was now sitting there, looking out at the Atlantic, waiting for him to show up. From what they'd been told, cars lined up every morning to get a spot at this campground. First come, first serve. But Jack and his mother hadn't come at dawn. In fact, they hadn't arrived until late last night. And the ranger who explained the system said they were lucky. A family had just left because of a sick kid. Jack figured his mom got back in line first thing this morning to see what else was available. This was their summer vacation, and they were planning on camping here in Acadia National Park for 3 nights. She'd want it to be extra special. Question was, should he pack up his tent and take it with him, or find her first? His stomach growled. He'd look now and pack later. Like most campgrounds, this one had lots of looping roads twisting through the woods. Jack began with Loop A and Loop B, figuring those would have sights on the water. But unless he was mistaken or had missed a road or two, none of the campsites had ocean views. So he scooped Loop C and Loop D slowly enough to get a good look at the sights, fast enough not to look too suspicious. Lots of places had a single tent, and since Jack's mother had borrowed both of the tents they were using, and because they had pitched them in the dark, Jack couldn't even say for sure what his mom's tent looked like. So he stuck to looking for the rental car. His mother had specifically asked for a Prius, not just because they were traveling all the way from Boston to Maine and gas was expensive, but because she believed in doing what she could to save the earth. So what does this car run on? Jack had asked. Biodiesel? Nope, gas and electricity. You can make energy from elephant poop, you know, Jack had said. The Dallas Zoo calls it poo power. P.U., talk about biogas, his mother had said. He'd laughed. His mother was so quick with one-liners. He was an expert on all things elephant. Right now, he wished he had the memory of an elephant. Was the car white or silver? Walking in circles suddenly felt ridiculous, so when he passed his own tent for the second time, it being on the only campsite with one tent and nothing else, he decided to stop looking. Instead, he reached into his pocket, pulled out his spending money, and tossed it onto the picnic table. $14.63. He was going to find food. There were no concession stands in the campground, no restaurants, not even a convenience store, so Jack jogged out to the registration hut and asked the woman behind the counter, who was reading A Fantasy by Robin McKinley, the same one his friend Nina had read earlier in the summer, where the nearest market was. Tired of Dinty Moor, she asked. Seawall Camping Supplies, right down the road. Jack knew all about Dinty Moor stew, not from camping, but from the nights when his mom had to work late and he made his own dinner. Do you know if, he was going to say, if a woman with short blonde hair and a light-colored Prius has come through? But a feeling in the pit of his stomach made him change his mind mid-sentence. If that store you mentioned has those neon red hot dogs? The woman laughed. Red snappers, absolutely. Jack smiled. At least one of the things his mom had promised on the drive to Maine was going to happen. He was going to bite into a glowing red hot dog and hear a snap. The first thing Jack did once he left the park and was en route 102A was pull out his phone again. There was a single bar. He had a tiny chance of reaching his mother. He punched in the number. Yes, it was ringing. But she didn't pick up. He wished they hadn't argued in the car last night. He wished she'd tried to be a little more understanding. He hung up and tried again, this time listening to her voicemail message. Becky Martell here, or not here to be exact. Don't leave any old message. Wow me. He waited for the beep and then he shouted, "Where are you?" You want to know what happens to Jack and where his mother is? You can pick up your copy of Small as an Elephant and continue reading. But right now, let's head over to chat with the author, Jennifer Richard Jacobson. All right, readers, we're in for another great treat today because we are here with the author of Small as an Elephant, our First Chapter Friday book this week, Jennifer Richard Jacobson. Thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so excited to talk about this book, and we're going to start with what was the story spark or seedling for this story? How did the first idea begin for you?
This one came to me in the most unusual way. I was at a highlights retreat way back when, so it was at Chautauqua. And I was sitting in a session with Virginia Ewell, who wrote Make Lemonade. And she was doing a session on great beginnings. And she said, I want you all to write a beginning that will hook the reader and not let go. And at that moment, I was sitting there with my notebook and I sort of thought, yeah, I've heard this many times before. It's something that, all writers have heard and students here in school. And I thought, okay, bring on the good stuff. And she said, no, this very minute, start writing. I want you to write a beginning in this moment that no reader will be able to put down. And I, at that moment, really got what kids go through in school when they're asked to write on demand. I thought, whoa, I wasn't beginning a new story. I didn't have something in mind. So I did what writers do. I stared out the window and suddenly I had this image. I felt myself, I felt trapped, and I was trapped in someplace warm and hot. And I realized I felt like I was in a pup tent. And I imagined myself crawling to the door of the tent and unzipping the flap and coming out into the cool air and seeing what? And then I realized nothing. That my character, whoever he or she was camping with, the car would be gone, the camping equipment would be gone, and so would anybody.
Yeah.
So would the parent or parents. And I thought, oh, okay, that intrigues me. And so I wrote up that beginning and shared it with other writers in the room and got an enthusiastic response about my character who'd been abandoned. And then I put this beginning aside. It wasn't how I started my stories. It wasn't how I thought about stories or how I entered them. So for about 10 years, I did nothing with it. But I would be with kids in school visits, in classrooms, and every now and then I would throw out this beginning at the end of the talk just to see the reception it got, and it always got this amazing reception. You could feel the energy in the room, people wanting to know what happened to this character. So I wrote it.
That is amazing. I love so many things about that. One, I love highlights. I went to a highlights workshop too. It's just like this magical space.
Mm-hmm.
I love that like other people like gave you feedback right away as far as like other writers or student listeners. I can't believe you set it aside for 10 years. That is just that's craziness to me. Very cool. Okay, so this story about Jack takes place in Acadia National Park. And for me, the setting of the story really helps bring it to life. And so I'm curious if you have ever been to Acadia National Park, or if you did research on the park, or what strategies did you use to make the setting of the story come alive for the reader?
I had been to Acadia several times, and I chose it for convenience. I live in Maine, and it would be easy to go and do research and to, I like having something physical to work with when creating setting in a book. I prefer beginning with a place in mind that comes with lots of feelings around it. And so I decided to place it there, but it turned out to be really fun. This book is every place that's public actually exists. Mm-hmm. And I allowed the setting to create parameters for me. So what I would do each day is I would sit down and I would know where Jack was. And I'd think, okay, how far could he travel on this day? And I would go to Google Maps and I would take that little yellow person and I would move them down and I would travel about that distance. And then, when you use Google Maps, you can get the photo view, the 360 photo view. And I would literally use the camera and turn it around to see where Jack was. And I'd think, okay, if I were Jack, what would I do here? Where would I go next? Where would I stay? What would I eat? And I had a lot of fun that way. And because I was using my own state, a lot was familiar to me. So I knew that if I were looking at a road that was a country road, or if I were looking at a road that was a little village, I could imagine easily what was around it. It was a really fun way to write.
I love how you took your own personal experiences and technology to combine them to create something even greater. And that's a strategy. The Google Map strategy is something that anybody can do from anywhere. I know sometimes when I'm writing, I'll look for like travel vlog videos on YouTube of places, like if I can't afford to go there, but that Google Maps like takes it to even more specific locations. So awesome.
Now I'll be truthful. I had to go back after the first draft that I showed my editor. She came back and said, "Ooh, there's not enough setting in this book." So it was all in my mind, but I hadn't gotten enough on the page. And I think that was because I was using technology. So I packed my bag, went back and visited each and every place that Jack went to. And I sat there and took notes and then went back and revised for more setting. But it was fun while I was writing. I don't think I would have I don't think I would do it differently, because while I was writing, it felt like play.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Very good. Okay, well, you've told us a little bit about your writing process, but can you give us a bit of a peek into your writing world a little bit more? Are you a hand writer or a typer, plotter or a pantser? Like, do you have to have like a special coffee or like, you know, what, how do you get your books done?
So I'm a hybrid. And what I do before starting a story is I wish I grabbed it. I keep a journal and I write about the story. I side write. I write, ideas that come to me. I brainstorm ideas. So, for example, when I was writing about Small as an Elephant, it occurred to me, I remember writing, maybe Jack could steal a bike. So I'm sort of writing about the story. And I'm interviewing my characters and I'm raising questions. And I do that for almost a year. Usually I'm finishing up one project and I'm in the copy edit stage. And so I'm beginning to work with a new idea. And I allow myself freehand just to explore in that way. But typically, once I begin writing the story, then I go to my laptop and I'm working from there. I like to begin the first few chapters without an outline, just to sort of hear the voice and see what comes up. And then once I'm in, maybe fourth, fifth, sixth chapter, then I do, I guess what you could call an outline. It's very loose. I can't always go through the whole book, even though I typically know how it ends. But I try to write down a few chapters ahead. And what I want to know about each chapter is, what is the setting going to be? What is the action going to be? And what's going to be the tension? So those are three things. I'm working on a new book here. And this isn't my actual journal. This is, sorry, I'm taking up time finding it. But so here you can see, this is what it might look like. So setting, action, tension, setting, action, tension.
Oh, cool.
And that's enough to give me confidence to jump into the chapter and know what to do on that day. It keeps me writing. And that's not to say that surprises don't come up. They do. And if I always honor anything that feels right, I'll start with a chapter and totally change my mind. But it's the outlining is really kind of hand-holding. It's a way for me to feel like I'm going to do something productive today.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great strategy. It kind of reminds me of Gwendolyn Van Dranen talks about milestones. Like, we're going from here to here, and I think this is the kind of path we're going to take. But if we end up going like this, like,
yes, I love that.
Loose outline, milestones, setting, action, tension. That's so great. This kind of leads into my next question, which is, on your website, you have 1-minute writing tips. I think for writers of all ages. But can you tell us a little bit about those?
Sure. So I have always been a teacher. I taught kids in schools. I've taught teachers how to teach writing. And now I'm, since COVID, primarily a writing coach. And I work with writers to develop their work. And I thought it would be fun to do these 1-minute tips based on gems that, I don't know, just little fun sparks that would give someone an idea that they could use right away, that they could apply to their work. In some ways, too, I wanted to draw attention to the fact that I was beginning to coach. So I was using them in that way. But what I discovered is they're really hard to do. And the hard thing to do is for me to get a tip down to 60 seconds that'll fit on Instagram.
Yeah.
And so that was the enormous challenge. Was, I found that I could come up with many, 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 many tips, but getting them into a 60-second presentation was a challenge for me, as you can probably tell in the way that I'm chatting with you now.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, have to boil it down to like just the most basic of goodness.
It's true.
Yeah, but it makes it
basic
super
language.
consumable. So that's amazing. I will make sure to put that link in the video description box. So if teachers want to check those out with their students, it's like, they could do one a week or something. I love
Thank
that.
you.
I love that. You mentioned that you were a teacher and a writing coach. And one of the things I saw on your website was a story about how you read like 400 picture books in a year or something. And you credit that reading experience for your first success in your first book as a writer. So can you, for all the people who are listening, who want to be writers and who think that they need to be writing all the time, can you tell them what would be the benefit of spending as much time reading as writing?
It is essential, I think. And in that, the experience that you speak of, I was asked to read 500 picture books in a very short period of time for an educational publishing company. And they were choosing books for their anthology. And so I was basically just hearing the rhythm of the books, the pacing of the books, and that structure was seeping into my veins. I wasn't looking at them at that time from a writer's point of view. But and it was, as you said, after that, I went on retreat and I wrote my first picture book that was saleable, and it just sort of flowed out of me. The rhythm was there, the structure was there, and it happens almost by osmosis. As a reader now, and I still make sure that I'm reading all the time. I hope that sort of process is still happening, that I can read for pleasure, but that my brain is picking up new skills, new ways of expressing all of the time. But I also read very consciously too. So I tend to, for example, write very tight, where like Small as an Elephant happens over a 2-week period. And you're with that character through the whole time. And that's where I often go. And I'm trying to learn how to space my writing out more, to have more time pass in a character's life. And I'll be reading and see, oh, that's how this author did it. I could do it that way. So I'm always taking notes as I read too. They're sort of mini craft lessons, reading books.
Absolutely. I always think if there's something that I want to do, I look at how somebody successful has already done it and like deconstruct it, right? And then you try to figure out how to do it your own way. And even if you do it like them first, like eventually, you'll get it to be your own way. So that's amazing. These are such great tips. Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're working on next?
Sure. So I have my newest book that's out is Crashing in Love. And it's a middle grade in the vein of Small as an Elephant. And then I'm working on a new middle grade right now. And it's the title is The Pecking Order of Chickens.
Ooh.
Yeah. And it's actually about sibling rivalry.
Okay. Good stuff. And if readers want to connect more with you, where's the best place for them to do that?
So I'm on Facebook at Jennifer Richard Jacobson, and Twitter at JR Jacobson, and Instagram at Jennifer Jacobson Books, or they can go to my website at jenniferjacobson.com.
Awesome. Well, I will be sure to include all of those links. Thank you so much for your time and for great books. And we look forward to reading more from you.
Amanda, thank you for having me. This was a true honor.
Awesome. Have a great day. Happy reading, everybody.
Bye-bye.
To continue reading Small as an Elephant by Jennifer Richard Jacobson, pick up a copy from your school library, local indie bookstore, or from the link in the description box of this video. This week's mystery quote says, "All along the way, Jack realized he had never really been alone. He had been part of a makeshift herd, one that had spread out over miles." Then make sure you check out the rest of the First Chapter Friday playlist. I have tons of great middle grade and YA stories waiting for you. Please like this video and subscribe so you can stay connected for more great First Chapter Friday videos and other videos you can use in your classroom. Happy reading!